I am very excited to introduce my friend, Camille Nighthorse. We discovered last night when we were talking that we may have met in Hawaii a long time ago when we were both working at the Polynesian Culture Center, but we're not sure. But we did meet in Santa Fe when I was going to school at IAIA, and she was living there and working on all kinds of film projects. And so it's been a while since we've seen each other, but she is just a wonderful person, a beautiful person, obviously. So Camille comes from the Wallapai tribe, and she's an enrolled member of the Wallapai tribe of northern Arizona. She's made many films, television commercials, TV shows, many things she's going to tell you more about. Some of them include my favorite film, The Lost Child. That's one of my favorites. I love that. And,
oh, yeah, that one too.
Oh, look, she brought it too. Okay. More Than Fry Bread, Black Cloud, Lethal Weapon 4, and many more. So we're going to let her elaborate on those details. So we're just really happy to have her here, and thank you so much.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Well, good evening. It's really an honor to be here, and I've never been to South Dakota in this area before, and I'm just amazingly thrilled of the beauty that you guys have here in South Dakota. I mean, landing in Rapid City, I didn't see that much beauty, but when I started coming into the green and the rolling hills, oh my gosh, it's just like, I didn't know South Dakota looked like this. I mean, I went to Standing Rock last year, and it wasn't, it was cool. I went there 3 times last year just to give my support all the way from Arizona, and I met a lot of interesting people. But the reason that I'm here, I wanted to talk about natives in film. You know, how many of you grew up watching spaghetti westerns? Okay, a few, probably mostly the older people. And the spaghetti westerns were like the parts where the characters are natives and they're not really natives. They're like white guys with blue eyes, painted with dark skin, and so I grew up thinking, wow, those natives on TV look really cool with blue eyes. I got to find me one of those native guys with blue eyes, and I never found one. But as I was growing up, I always wanted to be on the screen. And when I was 18, living up in Utah, they were looking for native actors to be in a movie called The Deer Slayer. You can tell this is really old, VHS. Let's see. Yeah, so this was actually my first exposure, just being an extra in a movie, because they needed a lot of native parts. You know, it's funny because I worked with a guy named Ned Romero, and so this is him when he was young. This was a long time ago. And then back in 2003, I think it was, I got to work in The Lost Child, and Ned Romero worked in this movie too, and it didn't dawn on me till after we made the movie. It's like, I worked with that guy a long time ago, many years ago. And it was pretty amazing, because this was like actually my first real speaking part. And I could have joined the Screen Actors Guild years before, but you know, it costs money to join SAG. And then once you join SAG, you can't work in independent films or non-union movies. So it's really kind of tough. It wasn't until I moved to Santa Fe that they're working on Into the West. Anybody see that movie, Into the West? The TNT miniseries? It was a good story. They had a lot of natives working on that. So I got to, actually I played the wife of Wes Studi. Who knows Wes Studi? Good actor. He plays a good bad guy, right? He played Last of the Mohicans. He was a really good bad guy in that one. But I loved that movie, and I loved all the music in that. But I'm going to go back a little bit and just kind of tell you a little bit about myself, because you may wonder who I am. I mean, my name is Camille Nighthorse, but coming from northern Arizona, I was raised by my grandparents, and I know that with a lot of Native people, we are raised by grandparents. That was just kind of like the normal thing, because ever since the kids started going away to boarding schools, you know, mom meets dad at a boarding school, so that's how we get all the interracial different tribes mixed. So yeah, I'm a boarding school baby, but actually I was a college baby. So I was raised by my grandparents, and I lived like the old way of life, where we didn't have plumbing, no indoor running water. I really hated to use the restroom at night because you had to like climb up halfway up the hill to use the outhouse. Any of you grew up with outhouses, having to use them? A few. It's not too out of the ordinary, right? I mean, it is now. but yeah, and then when I was 8, I went to go live with a foster family in Southern California. So it was like going to a whole different world, living with a white family and living in the white society, in the city in Southern LA. So that was a real eye-opener for me, and I was so shy, and I didn't like to talk to people because I just didn't understand their life. You know, I'd answer them if they asked me a question, and I always thought I was so stupid when they asked me, it's like, do you live in a teepee? It's like, no. We live in Arizona where we didn't have teepees. Teepees are like more Midwestern, Oklahoma, South Dakota, not in Arizona. We have different styles of, and you know, it's just that the Caucasian people, they just don't understand. You know, it's just, all they know is what they've seen on television. And television is what they show, what depicts the Native American Indian, is living in teepees and riding horses. They all assume that just because you're Indian, you know how to ride a horse really well. But that's not always the case. But I, you know, living on the reservation with my grandparents, I lived the old way of life where we did hunt for our own food. I would go out with my grandmother because my grandfather was 20 years older than my grandmother was. And so it was me and her, and we'd have our rifles, and she taught me how to shoot, and we'd go kill deer and elk. If we got an elk, we'd have to take my uncles along to help, and then we would skin it. Or sometimes we'd catch rabbits and have those. And then we'd go out and get stuff to make baskets so she could sell them at the trading post to get different kinds of food. So it was a really interesting way of life where I felt like I grew up with the old people. So I think I was like an old soul. So I went to live with this foster family for 6 years, and I did not like it. But I focused on sports. And we all have to find out what each of us has an interest in, or what you like. What are you passionate about? And that's kind of how life is. You need to find out what really makes you tick, what you're passionate about it, and pursue those dreams and goals. Mine at that time, I wasn't sure what I wanted to, but when I was in California, I wanted to just focus on sports. That's what I put all my energy into. I was a softball player, I was a fast pitcher, and played shortstop. And that was my escape of not having to deal with people. I just played sports really well. But after, you know, and then when you get to be like 14 or 13, maybe 15, you think you know everything, right? You get really smart. I decided I don't want to live with this family anymore. I need to be around my Native people. Even though I went home every summer, but I saw that I was losing a little bit of my language because I grew up with my language. But living with this family that didn't speak, you know, I would forget some words. So every year I'd go home and realize I forgot some, but I'd pick it all up by summer and then go back again. So by the time I was 14, it's like, I am not going back. I am going to go to boarding school with all my other friends from the reservation. So I went to the Phoenix Indian boarding school. Anybody been there before? Wow, one person. So I went there, and that was, you know, all these boarding schools, they started out being run by the government, the War Department, which is the BIA, and so no one was allowed to speak their language or sing your songs or dance your dances because they were trying to strip away all of the culture. They wanted to assimilate all the Native people into the white society. But when I went there, the education was horrible. I didn't even learn anything because everything that was taught to me in California, I'd already learned what they were teaching at the boarding school. So they were like really behind. The federal government doesn't always do everything up to par, but I went because I thought it was fun, and I got to hang out with other natives and learn of all the different tribes, and that's how I made friends with all the other tribes. But it was rough. The second week there, I got really beat up. You know, you have to learn how to fight, right? It's a tough world out there. And so I had to learn how to stand up for myself and be tough and no more wimpiness. So I turned out to be a tough girl. But I graduated from there and didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. But luckily I had, you know, we have people that are placed in our paths to help us along the way in life. And it happens to all of us, doesn't it? And sometimes we don't know it. Sometimes they may be annoying to us, but they are there for a reason and they help us with life. I had this vice principal who, none of my friends liked him. They thought he was just mean and they called him a bulldog. But he was nice to me. And he took me to his office one day and he said, Camille, I see potential in you, and I don't know why you keep making bad choices and you keep getting in trouble and you're getting ready to get kicked out, but I still see that there's hope. What is it that you want to do with your life? And we had just had different presenters come to our school like that week before on different careers that Native people could do, or anybody really. And one of them was modeling, the modeling career. And I thought, well, I think I'd like to do modeling. And he goes, okay, I'll tell you what, we'll get you set up with a modeling school. So I said, okay. So I started going to modeling school. Every Saturday I would go for, I don't remember how many months it was, but that's where I learned how to act normal. Sometimes we don't know how to act. We don't know how to behave. But I learned how to have etiquette and walk with grace and just have confidence, to be able to hold your head up and walk with confidence and dignity and not hang your head down and you know, feeling invisible or not wanting anybody to look at you. And I learned how to do makeup and hair and all those things, you know, makes one feel better about themselves when you learn all these things, so that you start to have a higher self-esteem. Because growing up, I felt I was ugly, and kids made fun of me on the reservation. I won't even tell you what they called me. I don't want you guys calling me any names. So, but yeah, so I had a low self-esteem, and I really didn't like myself, and I just, you know, I didn't want people looking at me. I just wanted to be invisible. But after going to this modeling school, I started to have a little bit of glimmer of hope of myself. And then once I finished high school, I didn't have any home to go to. I was actually homeless when I was 15 and 16. And when I went to the reservation in the summers, I worked on the Colorado River, because we had a river running company that was run by a couple of guys from Northern California who were hippies, and they hired some of the people from the tribe to work there. So I did that for a couple of summers, lived by myself, and so I was very independent. But after I was 18, I really didn't know where to go or where to live. But I went up to Utah because there was my mother. You know, I thought, oh, okay, I do have a mom. I'll go stay with her, because my grandfather had passed away. My grandfather was a guy named Fred Mahone, and he was an activist his whole life. He had gone to school in Chilocco when he was younger, but he ran away because he didn't like those boarding schools either. He was an activist, always fighting for the rights of the Native American people. He couldn't understand why the natives were not considered American, considered as an American. They didn't even have the rights to vote. He served in World War I, went to France, and he was an airplane pilot. So when he came back, his eyes had been fully opened. And that's what happens when, you know, when you can get out of your comfort zone, leave the area that you grow up, your eyes open up to new experiences. And with him going to another country, he realized how great this American continent was. And he was really out to fight for our rights as a people, owning our own land, not just being owned by the government. And he had told me one time that he went out to our Canyon, because we own part of the Grand Canyon. Our reservation borders along the western part of the Grand Canyon. And so we own part of the Colorado River too. So he had told our tribe that one day we're going to have people coming from all over the world to see our land. And so this is where we need to build our economy. And a lot of the tribal people just kind of laughed at him because we're like way out in the middle of nowhere. Who's going to drive way out there, hours on a dirt road to go see the canyon? But it took him a lot of years, and it wasn't until after he passed away that my uncle and some of the other tribal members decided to grade a road out there to the canyon. And so slowly, since 1988, people had been trickling out, coming out there. And now we have like 1 million visitors a year. And we're the ones that have, who's heard of the Skywalk? So we have the Skywalk out there too. And that's like put us on the map ever since 2007, built by a Chinese man who wanted to build this skywalk out there. So we did that. So, you know, when we have hopes and dreams and visions, you can make them realities. And from the movies that have been made, it starts with depicting things on the big screen, and that has so much influence on our people, is what we see on the big screen. And that's, I mean, that influences everybody. Even the way that we dress or what we wear, our fashions influence what we see on the screen, and music, all of that. So, you know, if you can use your own visions and your creativity, I mean, I've just noticed in the last year or a couple of years how the fashion industry has been influenced by the native designs and all of the tribal designs. It's really kind of cool. So it's been interesting to see a lot of natives coming up into the world of the entertainment business and into the fashion world. Because every year I go up to Santa Fe to Indian Market, and you know, they put on fashion shows, and we have celebrity actors there. How many of you watch Longmire? Just a few. Does it not play around here much? Netflix. Who has seen Thunderheart? That was an awesome movie, huh? I really like that, with Val Kilmer and Graham Greene. Graham Greene is like one of my favorite actors. Graham Greene also played in this film here. Who's seen this called Skins? It's really kind of sad, right? A little bit dark, but he's really good. He's good at acting that role of the Native American drunk. And it's just, you know, it's so sad, but it depicts of how life kind of really is in many places on the reservations. And so, you know, I'd have to admit that when I was going to the boarding school, it's like if I didn't want to get beat up, I had to join the crowd and go drink. You guys know how that is, how that feels? It's like if you don't, it's like if you want to be accepted, you just join them. And that's what I did. But at age 18, I realized how alcohol was ruining so many lives of my relatives and my friends on the reservation, in boarding schools. And when I realized that it affected me in a way where I didn't know what I was doing, like I blacked out, it's like, that's a scary thing, because you don't know what's happening to you if you can't remember anything. And so at age 18, I didn't want anything more to do with that. And I decided I wanted to be a good example, because that's what we need. We really need good examples, good role models, to stay away from all the things that harms our bodies, our minds. Because life, you know, we only get one chance at this life, and we have to do the best that we can. So when I was back in 2000, I wanted to go to the Sundance Film Festival. That's when they played, do you guys remember that movie with Victor and Thomas? That's like one of my favorite movies. I don't have that here, but I love that movie. They showed that. They had the premiere screening at the Sundance Film Festival in Park City. Utah. And I went and I watched that. That's when I first got to meet Adam Beach and Irene Bedard. And, you know, they're all really nice. So after meeting them and seeing that movie, that's when I decided, you know, I want to make films. And it would be so great if we could have more Native Americans getting into screenwriting and producing and not only acting, because I started acting, you know, at age 18, but I got married and then I had 8 children. And so I was busy with my life raising kids. And, you know, when you have kids, they become your top priority. They are your life. You have to put everything on the back burner that you desire. Being a mom, kids become number one. And I always knew that. So when I started having my children, I stayed at home and I was their teacher. And I just had them one right after another, boom, 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 till I was 32. And it's like, got to put the skids on this. 8 is enough. So I had to divorce my husband. Don't need a man in my life anymore. So I divorced him later. But you know, life was great because having these kids and their dad had an interest in a lot of other things in life. So we did a lot of moving. We lived in San Diego, we lived in Hawaii, we lived in Washington, D.C., we lived in Germany, we lived in London. And going all those different places even opened up my eyes more, learning about how great this country is. And how the people in Germany, they love Native Americans. You know, if you're over there, you're like instant celebrity to them over there. It's just, you know, if you want to be famous, just go over to Germany. Go dance for them. So I have a lot of friends who are entertainers. So they travel a lot over to Europe, different areas, and they perform. But there are so many different facets of areas where natives can get into the entertainment industry. And I want to see by a number of hands, who would like to be a part of the entertainment industry? Okay, just a few. Nobody wants to be any actors on the screen? Okay, that's fine, because we all have our different passions in life, right? Not all of us want to be on the screen, because you know it got to where I would rather be behind the camera than be, because like they always want the young people, and it's like I'm not young anymore, so I don't cut it. This here was a movie that I played in with Johnny Depp. And it was filmed in Kingman in Las Vegas, where he plays the part of Hunter S. Thompson. Has any of you ever heard of that movie? Do you remember the name of that show, or that movie? Fear and Loathing in Vegas. It was a really weird movie. I never watched it. Because he's on LSD all the time. Yeah, so he's on taking LSD trips. And so Johnny Depp always plays the strange roles, right? But he was really cool because we actually filmed this scene in Kingman, a little bitty town in Kingman, Arizona, because they needed like an old airport. And so that's what the scene was. And so we had to dress 70s style, and because it was based in the 70s. There was also another role for me where they needed dirt bike racers for the Mint 400. And so I also got to play a dirt bike racer in Las Vegas. And that was really fun because, you know, when I first, the first day that I worked and Johnny Depp was on set, I just went over there just to go say hi to him. And when I went up to him, he goes, "Hey, is it true you have 8 kids?" And I was thinking, how did he know that? I don't know who told him. But anyway, so that was just the scene there. Anybody recognize this actress? Irene Bedard. After working in some movies for a while, it's like, you know what, we need to promote Native American talent, not just to play natives, but to play other roles. And so I started scouting, and I started going to where everybody would gather with Native celebrities, like First Americans in the Arts Awards in Beverly Hills. I started going to that, and that was a lot of fun. But so I started making Native American calendars, and then I started my own talent agency so I could help. So we've got Irene there. We've got Kimberly, but she's played on Longmire. Let's see where she is. You might recognize her. She's played in a couple of things. She played in The Lost Child with me. She played one of my cousins. She disappeared. There she is. I don't know if any of you recognize her. She's also played, I think she was Into the West as well. Okay, do any of you recognize this guy? Anybody know his name? Kiowa Gordon. That's my son. And he was born in Germany. He was my 7th child. A surprise at that. It's like, I didn't tell his dad to leave me alone soon enough. But I'm really proud of him. I really are. I really are. Res talk. Anyway, here's a couple other pictures. This is my son and another daughter who's she just moved out to LA like several months ago, and so she's getting into acting, and she's done some music videos, and she's done a couple of commercials. So I'm really proud of her. She's actually 29, but she could pass for 16 years old. She's so tiny. She's like teeny tiny, but they're kind of like male and female versions of each other. I have to say, I know Kiowa would hate me for this, but Kiowa was with me in Santa Fe, and my daughters were living with me because I had gotten remarried. And they dressed him up like a hooker. and then she like videotaped him, and he looked just like her with some makeup on and wearing a little mini skirt. And I would never show anybody though. It was just so funny. But having these 8 kids, and when I had Kiowa, I let his hair grow long when he was little. He was like probably 2 or 3, and we had moved back to the reservation, and I always had that thought in my mind. It's like, you know what, I want to get him into film because he's got the look, and I'm letting his hair grow long. And so when I worked on different sets, I would take him along. So when I worked on Black Cloud, I took him along, and he played a little extra. But I don't know, I think he got cut out. But that was a fun movie to play on, Black Cloud, with Ricky Schroeder. Any of you know Ricky Schroeder? Yep. I do. Anyway, he's a nice kid. He played in a lot of TV shows as a kid actor. He was always really cute, but now he's old. And but he's married, has a bunch of kids. He lived in Scottsdale for a while, so I used to see him in Scottsdale because I've lived in Phoenix for the last, probably since 2005. I lived in Phoenix, Arizona, and this week I've just been moving. I don't know if you've heard about these fires going on in Arizona. Oh, it's so hot, it's crazy. And I don't know how these fires start. It can't be from the sun. I think it's from cigarettes being thrown out windows. But I was making this big move the other day, and they closed the road to Prescott because it was on fire. And so I had to like take the long way around. But life has been really challenging this week, you know, because I had to come here and try to prepare for this, but I've been in this big move. I'm moving a big house all by myself. So I've been taking all these things off my shelves that I was going to come, you know, share with you. And I want to know, by show of hands, how many films do you think are made that have Native Americans actually starring in them? Let me make it easier. How many TV shows right now in the last 2 years have been made with Native American actors? So It's tough actually to make movies with Native American themed stories, but there's been a few made, and there's one right now that they're actually looking for Native American actors with long hair to play in a show. Let's see. Let me ask you real quick. Who knows Mary Kim Titla? One? She is the president of Unity. Have any of you heard of Unity? Unity is a great deal for the youth, and she's president of that organization. She's been with that for a long time. But she was on my calendar, and she worked on a Native American comedy with me called More Than Fry Bread. Has anybody heard of that movie, More Than Fry Bread? It was a fry bread contest, and I won't tell you who wins, because you'll have to see that. These were a couple of scenes out of Into the West, where my husband, Wes Studi, is carrying me because I had just been shot. But I survived that shot, and then I got shot again, like a period of time down the road, we get shot again. When the cavalry comes and attacks, and, based on historical facts, they attack the camp in the middle of the night. And it was pretty intense to film this part, and it was in the wintertime in Santa Fe we filmed this, and they needed a lot of Native extras to be in this. And so that was one of the scenes when all the chiefs got together. And it was really cold, where we had to have teepees set aside to have little heaters in it so we can go and get warm when we're not filming. And a lot of little kids got really sick with colds that season. But this was just a really cool shot of all the teepees that they made for that movie. And that's my son. I took that shot. It was funny because after he came back working on the first movie in Canada, I set up a place where he could go and autograph. And I said, Kai, I got all these prints of pictures of you, and you're going to go meet all these fans, and you're going to sell these pictures. He goes, really? He goes, who would want to buy my picture? I said, oh, there's lots of girls that will want to buy your 8x10s. So I'd print off a lot of these pictures, and we'd go and he'd sell them for $5 each. And so it was kind of quite exciting for him. And that was at one of the awards things. But it was so exciting. I could not believe, it was my very first experience of going to a red carpet premiere in Beverly Hills with my son. And to get out of the car and hear all the girls screaming and they're crying. It's like, these girls are crazy. So they're all reaching out, trying to touch him, and it's funny how people just look at people on the screen as like something that's untouchable or out of this world, and they're just regular people. I found that out when I was working with them. It's like they're just regular people, because I worked with Chevy Chase in Vegas Vacation in Las Vegas, and he really was crazy. we were setting up, we were setting up the cameras, not we, but they were setting up the cameras, so we all had to just sit down, because we're in an audience where they used to show those, the Tigers show in Las Vegas. And Chevy Chase was just standing up there just waiting, and it was like after midnight. And everybody's just like starting to go to sleep. And he's standing up there, and I don't know if I should say this on being filmed, but he starts undoing his pants, and he just drops his pants, and he's like wearing these big heart-shaped boxer shorts, and that was a way for him to like wake everybody up, and everybody was laughing. But I mean, to me, that's crazy. Who would do that up on stage? Only Chevy Chase, and we have the same birthday, but he's older, way older than me. But it's been really amazing working with a lot of different people in the film industry. And it's gotten to where I don't really have that passion to be an actor anymore, because it's like I've been there, done that. There's more important things to life, and there's a time and place for everything that we do in life. And it's like, I'd rather have stories, true stories that maybe have a good moral to the story to be told. But I had a friend call me just a couple of weeks ago, and he's wanting to do a movie, a love story of a Native American dancer. The guy would be the dancer, and he wants me to produce it. So I thought, yeah, I'd like to do that. I'd like to be the casting director too and help cast. So, you know, I have a pool of people that I can draw from. But if any of you know a nice looking guy who can do fancy dancing, let me know. That somebody that wouldn't mind being in front of the screen and who could act. Okay, does anybody know this actor?
Yes.
He's my buddy. I like Gil. It was really funny because I got a call from a casting director. She's saying, Camille, she goes, I know you know all the Native people, and we're really looking for some elderly people to play extras. And you know, I'm not elderly, so she's not asking me. So she knows I have a mom that's 79. Well, she just turned 80. And she asked if my mom could be an extra. And I said, yeah, and I've got some other, you know, I know some other people who could work on this movie. You know, it's Transformers, the new movie that just came out. So I just called Gil just for fun. And I said, Gil, guess what? My mom's going to be an extra in Transformers because they're looking for some elderly extras. And he goes, so are you asking me if I want to be one of the elderly extras? And I said, no, I'm just telling you. And he goes, well, I got a speaking part with Mark Wahlberg. So I think Gil just worked one day, and he came over to Phoenix because they were shooting in Phoenix. They shut down part of one of the old, the newer freeways to shoot some of the scenes. And so since my mom was working in it, and she had dementia last year. She's got Alzheimer's now, but I had to go with her to be with her on set and kind of direct her what to do and what not to do. Because she at one point, she was like trying to walk off the set because she just, in one of her moods, and she didn't want to be around. So I had to like, no, Mom, they need you here. You're going to be on the screen. So, but anyway, so it was kind of fun hanging out with Gil. He came out and he did his deal with the speaking part with Mark Wahlberg for a one-day shoot. He plays a cop, and I think a police cop. I haven't seen the movie yet, but I want to see it. So we got to go hang out. So Gil is one of the guys that played in the Twilight series. Do you remember that? Yep, Jacob's dad. Yep. Mr. Black? Mr. Black, yep. So he's really fun. He's fun to hang out with. I actually, last year I took him out to Grand Canyon West. I invited him as my guest to go see the skywalk and go pontoon rafting and ride a helicopter with two of my boys. We all went and just had fun. But he also played in a movie that came out last year called Hell or High Water. Did any of you see that one, Hell or High Water? It's a really good movie with Jeff Bridges. So he like co-stars with Jeff Bridges in this. And he's really, I won't tell you what happened. There he is in that movie, Jeff Bridges and Gail Birmingham. So he cut off all his hair, so he no longer has long hair. It's really short. But he looks younger with short hair. And this is, who knows the big guy, the Hawaiian guy? Jason Momoa. Usually all the women know who Jason Momoa is. He's playing Aquaman that will be coming out. So he played in Frontier, and he played in The Red Road with Kiowa. They played, they're like half brothers. Yes, he played in Game of Thrones. Mm-hmm. And he also played in The Frontier. Mm-hmm. Yeah, my son played in Frontier. I think he, like just the first episode, and they got killed off, right? Did my son get killed off? Huh? Did he? I didn't watch it yet. I haven't had time. So there's Kiowa Gordon. But he's got some things in the works. He actually, he's got somebody that's writing a screenplay on his great-grandfather, and he wants to play my grandfather about his life. So that would be really cool. My daughter. Now, who knows Tatanka means? Everybody should know him, right? He's a comedian. And he's been getting a lot of work in movies, too. But he played with me in More Than Fry Bread. He was one of the contestants that I beat. He was a good fry bread maker. And he played a Navajo. So anyway, this is that show. It's an HBO series called Westworld. And they're looking for Native Americans. If any of you are interested, take down that email address and send them a headshot and your information. But you have to have long hair.
And be in good shape.
And what?
And be in good shape.
And be in good shape. Okay, so. I want to ask you if you want to ask me anything. Anybody have any questions? Raise your hand.
So you had the picture with all those movies. I saw Skins and Greenkeeper. Did you play roles in those too?
Not all of them, no. I just these two. Gil played in this one, Dreamkeeper. That was an interesting movie. But no, some of the others that I played in with Selma Hayek called Fools Rush In. That was a cute movie. I'm trying to think. Which ones of you have seen The Lost Child? It was a Hallmark television show. And it was kind of based on a true story where these Navajo babies were stolen from the hospital and they were adopted out. And so the one girl, she grows up in, I think, Connecticut, and after her mother passes away, she finds information that she was actually adopted and she's from the Navajo tribe. So she goes back to find, and Irene Bedard is her sister. So it's based on that story, coming to Arizona and getting to find out who her blood relatives are, and then bringing her Anglo husband and children to come live on the reservation, and just how hard it is to try to, bring a family onto the reservation that have no idea what it's like to grow up on a reservation. Because it's hard for even natives. If you haven't grown up on the reservation and you grow up in the city and you go back to the reservation, it's really hard. It's even to get accepted, because then you're almost considered an outsider, even though you're a member of that tribe. I feel fortunate that I grew up on the reservation. It was a hard life, but I didn't know it was hard. I didn't know that we're poor, because I was happy. And that makes the world a difference when you have love in your family and you have people who care about you, that money doesn't really matter. It's just that we need it to live on. My grandmother survived by living off the land and making baskets to sell so that she could buy stuff that she couldn't get, like flour and coffee. And a lot of times we got commodity foods. We all know what commodity foods are. I remember the cheese was great. And the peanut butter. And then living in the white society and then going back to the reservation, it's, learning the best of both worlds and trying to make the best you of all your experiences. And, all the bad experiences, just let them go. They're there to learn from and to grow from, but you don't need to let it ruin your life or to carry it around. Just let those things go that don't really matter or that bring you down. How much time do I have?
Oh, 15 minutes.
Okay. Was there another question that anybody had?
How'd you get into acting?
I started out by doing extra work. And then when Mars attacks came to Kingman, because I moved my family back to the reservation. We're living in Peach Springs, Arizona, along Route 66. And there was a big, huge casting call for Mars attacks in Kingman. So I started working there, and I met the casting director, and she was out of Las Vegas, and she really liked my look. And so she called me every time that a big movie was coming to Las Vegas. So that's why I got to work in Lethal Weapon 4, and I got to be a stunt driver because I was a pretty good driver on the freeway scenes.
What do you do now?
What do I do now? Well, I've been going through some major transitions just because my husband passed away 2 years ago, and since I have 9 grandchildren now, this all last year I just was taking a break from life and just trying to enjoy my kids and my grandkids, and I was traveling around to Hawaii because 2 of my daughters were in Hawaii, and they were trying to get me to move out there, and I had to give it a lot of thought. So I was out there for like a couple of months, and I loved it out there, but it's like, no, I can't live here because, you know, more of my family is on the mainland, and it costs too much to go back and forth. And my mom was in Arizona too, and it's like, I have to take care of her. You know, we always have to prioritize and think what's most important for us. Right now, I'm moving to a different area, and I am going to work on producing some films, and I just try to help my kids do what they want to do in supporting them. Like with 2 of my kids living out in LA, you know, I like to go out there and visit them, and any way I can help them, I do. My son Kaiwa, he was almost going to get married, but he did have a child, and she is just cute, and I just love to go out and see her. She's a little 4-year-old girl, and she's part Hawaiian and part Walapai. So I go around trying to do good things for others. That's kind of what I've been doing. To, you know, because when you go through a part of your life where it's just sad or really rough, then you have to like forget about yourself and just focus on other people, and it'll pull you out of that. It's like if you lose yourself, then you'll find yourself. And it's true. Because I have gone through that many times where I go through hard times, and I just go and do things for other people, and then that brings me joy, and it fills my heart again, and it replenishes who I am, and then I can be me again, but continue to help others, you know, and that's how you kind of have that light with you too, and people will see that in you. To make friends is just to be a friend to others and to be a good listener. Because everybody has something to offer someone. Don't be selfish. Don't hide those talents that you have, whatever it is, and find out what your talents are. Because too many of us, we go through life not really knowing what our talents are. Sometimes we may just stumble upon it, but we have to work at what our talents are. And I have to think that one of my talents is just giving. I just give of myself to people. I don't have talent in the entertainment industry. I don't see it that way at all. It's just something that I just wanted to do, to be a part of, and to meet all the people that are up there doing things that, you know, yeah, I like to hobnob with them and get to know them, but I don't feel like I'm one of them at all. I'm just over here doing my own thing, and I love to travel. I have a daughter now that's in Austria, and she is married and has 2 kids, and she works for the United Nations, and I'm really proud of her. I have another son who finished law school, and he's a sports agent for the NFL, so he goes around getting football players and tries to get them recruited by the NFL teams. So I've just been working on helping my kids to be the best they can be, and I think that's how a mom can find her success, is to see her kids be successful. And that brings a lot of great joy to me. Any questions?
Are there any roles that you turn down are there roles that you turn down for whatever reason, and is there one that you get taken up that
Actually, there were some roles that I've turned down because they didn't fit my standard of living. Even though, because I'd gone to different acting schools, and I was always told that, you know, if you want to be a great actor, never turn down a role, just do it. And to me, I won't do that. I won't try to act like somebody that is not of somebody that I can't look up to. I feel like I would like lose respect in myself. Yeah, to do something that's against my standards, like whether it's like a role where I have to smoke cigarettes or cuss, I won't do it, just because it goes against my grain. You know, I quit cussing when I was 18. I really straightened my act when I was 18. But yeah, you know, there's other roles where they want me to be, like, take my clothes off. It's like, no, I'm not going to do that either. That's degrading. Because I have a lot of self-worth, and I don't want anybody to see me in a light that isn't me. So it's, you know, it's all important of what we choose to do, because there's always consequences of every choice that we make. And it's all about, can you live with that consequence? Are you proud of that consequence? Is it something that you wouldn't mind your mom and dad seeing? You know, if it's something that you don't want the public to see, then you know it must be wrong, right? So anytime you go to make a choice, if it's something that you can't tell somebody about, or if it's secretive, then you know it's wrong. So that's kind of how you judge what right and wrong is. Okay, there was another question.
Who's your favorite actor?
A Native American or just anybody?
Anybody.
Just anybody. Well, I have a few, but Graham Greene is one of my favorites. Graham Greene is good. I don't know if any of you have seen The Shack. That's a really good story. I read that book years ago first, and I know the writer for that. He's my friend on Facebook, John Fusco, and he helped write that story, The Shack. And I said, you know what? When I read that book, I knew it would make a good movie. And he's the one that also wrote the screenplay for Hidalgo and Spirit, and so he's a good writer. But Graham Greene was I was surprised to see Graham Greene in there. He's getting up there in years now, but he's, you know, I just have always liked him. I like Jeff Bridges, and let's see, I used to really like Kurt Russell. As a kid, Kurt Russell was like my heartthrob. So I actually got to meet him one time in Albuquerque and hung out with him, and it was like, Kurt and I had a lot in common. We both, because he spent his summers with his grandparents, and he loved baseball. He wanted to be a pro baseball player, and I loved softball. And he said he used to go hunting with his grandparents, and I hunted with my grandparents. It's like, hey, we could be brothers and a brother and sister, I told him. He said, we already are. So I thought that was pretty nice of him. You know, it seems like there were a lot of really good actors a while back, but it's like most of them are dying off. And so there's a few good actors coming up, but it's just not, it's a whole different era. Movies are just different nowadays. Television, I don't even like to watch TV anymore. I mean, The Walking Dead, come on. My daughter got me hooked on that. But, you know, it was really fun. I just have to tell you a really quick story. So my husband died of cancer a couple of years ago, and I had married him up in Santa Fe. And he was a little bit older. But after he passed away, you know, every time I went home, I would get on Facebook and I would send him messages on Facebook to his private message. And I'd just write to him about how I'm feeling. And this one particular day, like a month after he passed away, I went in my room, I just turned the TV on, plopped on my bed, opened my laptop, started to write him a message, and then the TV turned off. I got back and turned the TV back on, and it happened to be Walking Dead. But I started to write him a message again. I said, Neil, if that's you turning the TV off, will you turn it off again? And then it flipped off again. It's like, okay, I see you're reading my messages. So he let me know that he's been reading my messages that I sent to him. So, you know, I totally believe that the spirits are close by. The spirit world is here, and we just have a thin veil. because I just know that. I've had a lot of experiences spiritual. So that's why it's very important of how we walk our life, you know, on a path that is good for us. But I'm really glad to have been here to just talk to you all, and I hope you're able to get something out of this. Just, you know, from my own perspective of how it is in the world, and in the entertainment industry, it's all about just, I guess, trying to entertain people, but it's just gotten to where they're trying to do it in like a shock factor in the entertainment business, and it's just, so I just find a lot of garbage on TV, and so I don't even watch TV anymore, unless my kids come into town and they say, "Hey, Mom, you got to watch this." Like, let's watch Frontier. It's like, okay. So I just watched one episode, but yeah. So if there's any more questions, let's see your hands.
Of all the actors in the world, who would you cast as Crazy Horse?
Crazy Horse was a very interesting character. Wow, he was brave. He would not put up with what the government was trying to get him to do. I would like to cast my son Kiowa. And I'm not biased. Yeah. But I think, isn't that movie going to be made sometime? I mean, you see that Hollywood tries to do movies of the big named natives who are popular or you know, have a great story to tell. And I would like to see more Native Americans writing. I mean, we each have a story, not even about, it doesn't even have to be the great people, but each one of you have your own story to tell. So, and I understand, you know, there's an English class that you guys take here. Do you guys do writing in that? Writing stories or whatever? But I know Stephanie Meyer, when she was writing the Twilight stories, you know, she got her master's in English at Brigham Young University, and she started to have these dreams, and she would get up in the middle of the night, and she didn't want her husband to know what she was writing. And so she would be writing these stories, and then she would have her sister read them, and her sister was hooked, and she says, "You have to publish these." And she's going, "No, I don't want anybody to know I had these dreams." But see what it did? I mean, my gosh, it just took a life of its own. And I know my kids had to read it in school, I think, in Arizona. And somebody said, "You know, you should read this book." It's like, "No, I'm not interested in vampires and werewolves." It's like, I have more important things to do than read those kind of things. And then we're living in Cave Creek, and that's where Stephanie Meyer lived. And she went to my same church. She was the Sunday school teacher of my two of my kids. And she came up to me after church one day, and she goes, "Camille," she goes, "have you read any of my books?" And I said, "No." She goes, "Well, we've started pre-production already on Twilight, but we're going to be making the other movies of the other books, and I want to know if, you know, your kids would like to audition." I said they probably would. And so she gave me the audio tapes. So on a trip to California one day, I started to listen to them. It's like after 5 minutes, I was hooked. My gosh, just with all the vocabulary and descriptions, it's like you're there. And it's like, you don't want to leave. We get to the hotel in California, it's like, I don't want to get out of the car. I got to just sit here and listen to this story. But I mean, I thoroughly enjoyed listening to her stories. And of course, the movies are never as good as the books. But it was quite an amazing experience for my son, and to see him get this notoriety that he did. And oh my gosh, with all the natives that got to go to these different conventions every other weekend all over the country to just see their fans. That was just amazing. They got paid a weekend. They went. They got thousands of dollars. It's like, "Let me take care of your money, son." He goes, "No, Mom, I can handle it." He moved like 3, 4 of his friends from Arizona to LA. Within 8 months, he was broke. It's like, I told you. But you know, sometimes we just have to let our kids make mistakes and learn the hard way, right? Because sometimes you just don't want to listen to your parents. I mean, I was the same way. Well, I didn't even have a dad to listen to. But, and then my mom, I didn't want to listen to her because she wasn't a very good example. It's like, who are you to tell me what to do? But yeah, it's just important of how we live our lives and what we do with ourselves, and listen to those who you trust and admire. Okay? Thank you.